this month's Tech Tip session. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Vince Danielli, and with me today is Ramsey Sufian from our construction team. Ramsey and I have worked on creating a lot of custom cost document templates for a lot of different customers. So I wanted to have Ramsey here for reinforcements and to be able to support any questions that you guys have come in through today's session. So as Sarah mentioned, please, if you have questions, even if they're maybe a little bit off topic, shoot them in the chat or the Q&A, whatever method we made available, and we'll make sure to address them throughout today's webinar. All right, so with that, quick review as normal with our Tech Tip sessions. I try to make these as informal as possible and not to overload you with just PowerPoint. So we like to get into the product. We don't have anything necessarily other than a loose agenda plan. So anticipate that based on your questions and just where our discussion leads us, that we will go down some different rabbit holes and further exploration around the topic. And for today, cost management, document templates. All right, so quick, very brief overview what we're talking about if you're not already familiar with document templates in cost management. So I'll show this live within the settings of a project, but cost management allows us to store what we consider document templates. Those document templates can be main contracts, subcontracts, payment applications, change order cover sheets, a whole bunch of different things that we can develop or that we can populate from the different tools within cost management. So we can add these documents to the appropriate subcontracts and change orders, whether that's a potential change order, an owner change order, a subcontract change order. So I'll show you where all of these live within the environment. And out of the box, Autodesk does provide us with some sample documents. I will spare you my opinion on the ones that come out of the box. I will generally state that they are very good as an introduction to how document templates are set up. Chances are, if you're actually utilizing document templates and cost, you're going to overhaul and customize the sample documents that come with Autodesk. If anything, you might create them from scratch as you become more familiar with setting the formatting and the document variables up. But in this screenshot, I just wanted to show an example. This is a screenshot of the document templates for main contract. And when you actually go and create a main contract within your project, or you have, shouldn't say when you go to create the main contract, but when you set up your main contract schedule of values and input the owner of that main contract, different fields that we populate within the main contract area of cost can then be reported to or documented in one of these document templates. So this example here is we've got a sample document for a main contract template set up in the settings. When we actually go into the main contract view of cost, we can add this document based on the document template, and the result is a main contract document with some information populated based on your custom templates. The custom templates are heavily reliant on the document variables. So that same, if I back up one step here, this same document that I'm showing as an example on this slide is derived from this document template. So you'll see these different document variables that are placed here. Again, this is the sample document that comes with the Autodesk Construction Cloud for a main contract. And just to point out, because I think it's kind of funny, the syntax that is used is actually called mustache syntax. So the reason it's called mustache is you'll notice that the variables are contained within the mustache brackets. So when you're trying to understand what variables are available to populate your document templates, the help section is my favorite resource to rely on, but it's kind of interesting, and I don't know that we'll have time to really deep dive into this, but the mustache syntax is not just limited to what variables are provided in the help section of Autodesk. I'll show you where there are links to show you some of the other variables and the way that it can manipulate data, and you can create filters and rules within the document variable syntax. But the help section, at least when you're getting started and you're trying to build out your own document templates, this is absolutely 100% your best resource to start pulling the correct variables. And I'll explain where that is and what they look like and how to use them in different scenarios. One thing I will point out, creating custom documents is definitely time consuming. There's a lot of, Ramsey and I do this for every client that we're creating document templates for. There is a lot of testing and checking to make sure that the formatting is correct, that the variables are indeed populating the documents the way that you want them to. So it's time consuming to set up the document initially and then to validate and test it. There's a lot of trial and error, to put it lightly, that goes into that. Now, fortunately, all of that time that you spent up front in setting up your document templates, once you have them really dialed in to your company standards for contracts, change orders, etc., if you have to alter them, it's probably minor tweaking and not a complete overhaul to the existing template that you created up front. So maybe some time investment on the front end when you're implementing cost initially, but you will reap the benefits downstream. So every project that you create from a project template, or if you're updating based on a new feature for document template libraries in the account admin, you can pull from those libraries and inject them into your projects. You might have different project types that require different types of contracts, so you might want to store those in the library. With that, let's get into it. So let me make sure I should have, all right, cool. So I will use a data set that I've created in our IMAGINiT account called our construction LTU East Residence Hall project. I've already set up some data in this cost environment. So I have already imported a budget. Oops. Already imported a budget. I have a main contract that's been executed with main contract SOVs in it that are linked to budgets. All of this is really irrelevant to our conversation today. And really the important thing is in the settings, so this will require you to have project admin access and have your cost management module turned on to get access to the settings within cost. But within the settings, under the general area, if you look at documents and attachments, this is not where you would find your document templates. You'll find your document templates in the itemized tabs here for budget, cost, and change order. So each one of these under budget, if I scroll down and look at the document templates, you can see here that we have a main contract document template and then a budget payment application document template. So two different document templates to support generating a main contract. And when you start creating your pay periods and creating your payment applications, you would generate the pay app from the document that's tied to this item. So for budget, supporting those two different areas, main contract and pay app. Under cost, our document templates support our subcontract documents, and then the cost, so the contract invoicing or pay apps on the cost side. So again, much like budget, but inside of cost, if we want to develop the contract document, it's in the contract tab. And for cost pay apps, when you set up your pay periods, you have a pay period, you click on the cost pay app, and in the detail flyout, you'll have the option to pull the document template to create your cost pay app. And then finally, under change orders, we have all these different change orders potentially that we're going to use within cost management, PCOs, RFQs, CORs, change order requests. Sorry, PCO is a potential change order. RFQ is a request for quotation. COR is a change order request. OCO is owner change order. And then SCO is a supplier change order, AKA subcontract change order. So for each one of those different areas, we have templates that we can tie to those different steps. So that's where you'll find these samples. And if I make it simple, just using the budget document template, under this main contract, if I choose edit, you'll see that the one that comes out of the box is right here. From this point, so as you become more familiar with creating your own custom document templates, this is the area where you will drag and drop them into your project to be used to generate your main contract document in this case. So right now with the sample one, there isn't much to this other than I'm going to show you if I open this template. It shows you the document template with the raw variables in it. And then from here, if you wanted to edit this or customize it, obviously we'd probably want to take off the water stamp for sample. So right from the web version, you are able to edit the document template and update it within your cost settings. I typically prefer downloading this locally to my computer and editing it directly in Microsoft Word and then re-uploading it when I make changes. It used to be, and maybe it was something with my personal settings, but when I would look at these documents through the web version, the formatting would get very skewed. So things like my table widths and some of the spacing wouldn't look accurate through the web browser. It looks like recently a lot of this was resolved, and this does give you a better indication of how this document template would come out when you process it. But I don't know, maybe because I'm a creature of habit and what I've been used to is just downloading the DOC file locally, updating it, and then re-uploading it over the old version. But you are able to, when you're in edit mode of this, if you wanted to remove anything from the document or add new variables, you can do this directly. Then just it automatically saves it. And once you close out, so I go back to, let's see, usually just hit the back arrow to update it. But Ramsey, I can't remember if you're editing it through the web version. I'm pretty sure it automatically saves it as you make those changes, but do you know to get out of this, do we have to go back to a viewing mode and then X out?
Yeah, so you're correct. You would have to go into viewing mode, X out, or you can just go to the previous tab where your are held.
Yeah, I think just even going back to the tab once it's updated. So probably a moot point. It's not critical once you edit it. If I just type in any text. Within the document, it's automatically saving it. So you might want to just wait till the changes are saved and then you can X out of that tab and that should update. So now if we view this again, my little comment there should show up in the preview. Yep, okay, so it did save it. So you can just, as you update it, just wait for that save to complete and then you can close it out. You'll notice that automatically the version of the document is now V2 just because I made this little change. So, but anyway, what I was saying, what I prefer to do is download it. We'll just throw this in my downloads. And then I like to edit it through Word. I'm just more familiar with the desktop version of Microsoft Word. So there we go. And we'll enable the editing. Probably save it out as a different name locally and then re-upload it to that the document templates area. But yeah, certain things in here I'm just more familiar with, deleting the watermark and updating the headers and footers however we want, and just even creating tables and stuff. I just find it easier for me, personal preference obviously, to edit this through the desktop app. And then when you make your changes to the document, You just have to save it. So I'd probably do a save as or save a copy of it. I'll save it to my downloads. And then once that file is saved, the process to re-upload it to your project or to your project template, probably even better, is to go back into the settings. You can drag and drop it or just hit browse. I'll browse to my downloads, open it. And now I have an updated document in here. The cool thing too, I'll point out, if you have different variation, maybe you wouldn't have different iterations of a main contract document template, but in the other areas, if you have, we had one recently where a client requested for their payment apps, they wanted to have one that's distributed internally that shows like the values against SOVs and the work complete, but then they wanted an external one where it removed the values. So it removed the amounts in the SOVs and just had percentages that they could distribute to their general contractor for sign off. You can edit and create different document templates and store them within the same spot. And then when you go to create them against the payment application, you would have two there to choose from. You can generate both of them and just make sure that you only send off the appropriate one to the owner with the values, one to the general contractor without whatever that workflow requires. I'll also point out that beyond just the Word document, Excel files are also supported here. We usually or typically see Excel formatting more for the pay apps. So like, a larger list of all of the either subcontract SOVs or main contract SOVs in an Excel table as opposed to a Word document. And if you want to see what those Excel files, there are templates. And where is it? Oh yeah, right up here. Download sample document. If for some reason someone deleted the sample of the Word document out, you can always get to it through this download link. Or if we wanted to see what the Excel version of that document would look like, we can click the Excel. And this again just downloads a template. And if we open this up, very similar to what we were seeing in the Word doc, just in an Excel format. Some people prefer this because it's a lot easier to work with some of these tables to generate the document as opposed to a Word doc. The formatting might be easier within Excel. Ultimately, when you create the document template and distribute it from a main contract or from a pay app, it will generate a PDF that you would send out. So it doesn't really matter what the authoring program is, just whatever you're more comfortable with in formatting. And when we create these document packages, they will create PDFs automatically that you can distribute. Okay. All right, what else here? Okay, so you're probably wondering, all right, I'm showing you the documents, but I haven't discussed these variables yet. As I mentioned in the beginning slides, our best friend in exploring and understanding what variables we need to pull into our documents are stored in the help section of Autodesk Cost. Conveniently, when you're in one of these setting areas, like this main contract template area, right here in the top right corner, you can hit this button here to learn more about document variables. And this takes you directly to the build help section that shows you a whole bunch of these document variables that you can copy and paste into your custom templates. Now, this first one, I think it defaults to the contract and main contract variables. But if we're trying to create change order documents, and actually it probably directed me here because that's the area of the settings I'm in. I would assume that if I were in the settings for a change order, let's go into PCO, click this button. Cool. It took us right to the change order variables. So this is a really good reference. I always like to pull this off onto my other monitor when I'm creating these documents. These give us a good description of what these variables do and what they're pulling from the data that you've entered in cost. And also with the change order, you'll notice that some of these columns have a red X through them. That simply means that whatever these variables are, like due date, it's only available in the RFQ document template. Where you see these X's, there's if you read through this, if we're creating a document template for an owner change order, the syntax for owner change order is OCO. So where we do have a green check mark under OCO where the variable is accepted, we simply replace an X with OCO, and then it's pulling the owner change order number based on that variable. So this would actually be an OCO dot number, and it would pull the respective owner change order number into the document. There are some general ones. Let's go back up to document templates, variables. There are some project-based ones that I like to point out. So if we look at project variables, at the header of your, there's two there. At the header of your documents, typically you'll have something like project name and project number. So these show you what the syntax is there. A lot of times we're trying to pull in our company's address, the owner's address. That's in these people variables. You have owner variables here that you can pull in. And then like recipient, if you wanted to tie in who's receiving that document for approval. And then again, wherever you see these X's in the variables, you have to replace it with the appropriate control variable. So if I'm trying to create a recipient name of my main contract, so that's a value that you would actually enter in to the detail file of your main contract. If we want that to report in our document, we would simply replace the X with main contract dot recipient dot name. And when we generate the document, that should return the full name of the recipient of that document. So let's see some of this in action. Go over here to budget, main contract. So once we've gone through and formatted our document templates with the different variables that we want to report, and as you're learning this, I would encourage everyone to start from the sample documents, maybe add some variables that aren't in the sample document just to see what the result is. And as you become more familiar with how this works, you'll start to get it. You'll go, all right, I've got to put this variable in this table, and then it's going to report our scheduled value or whatever. But it's good to run through just some general examples to start to get an understanding of how these documents are generated. But for the main contract, for example, and I've already executed this one, but if I want to create a main contract document, I don't know why I was getting this error here. Let me delete that. So in the main contract section of our budget, I click on the main contract, and over in the detail pane under documents, you'll see there's a document package. We can add our document by generating the document from the document template. And you'll see my only option here is the sample document that I had in the cost settings. Once we click that, it's going to take a few moments to generate the document. Hopefully I won't get an error. Cool, no error there. And now if we just want to view this, you simply click on the document, and then we can view it directly in ACC. Usually it loads faster than this. Let's see, refresh button. There we go. And as you can see, based on the sample document variables, it's pulling in the project name, the contract number that's associated to the main contract, the title of the main contract, and the contract date is. the recipient of that. So address of the recipient. Hey, there's my little, Vince was here. Now, remember, I built this off of the previous one and not the one that I uploaded. In fact, I don't think I hit the save button when I uploaded the change that I made on the desktop. So instead of saying Vince and Ramsey were here, it's just saying Vince was here. But in these tables, we can see it's pulling in values based on how I have everything indexed and organized within the main contract SOVs of that main contract. And then at the bottom here, we see that there's a block here to put the owner address, the date. The reason that these did not populate, even though I would assume that there's variables in the sample document, I know I assigned IMAGINiT as the owner, so maybe I'll have to check what those variables are. But sometimes when you get blanks, when you expect there to be something in here, this is a good example of trying to figure out why it isn't working. So I'd probably jump back to my document template, see what variables are there in owner, and make sure I actually have the owner information populated within the project. And most of the time within cost, that relates back to our settings, company setup. Yeah, so this is why it didn't have anything there. I didn't assign IMAGINiT as the owner. We could assign a contact. Hey, Ramsey, you're the contact for IMAGINiT. And now, if I want to make an update to that document, a couple of different ways you can do this. It keeps giving me this error today, even though I know we just saw it. It generated the document. But you can click the, usually it allows you to refresh it, but maybe because there's an error here, it's not giving me that. So I can just delete the existing one, generate a new one. And fingers crossed, hopefully it pulls in the address for the owner into that section. So let's see. There we go. Perfect. So again, the data that you're getting into these is wholly dependent on what you've entered into the different settings and different fields of cost management. So if there's nothing there for it to see, it's going to return blank. So this is a good example. Like I didn't have a general contractor set up in the settings, so it's returning that blank. I don't know why this is more formatting here where it says address by, I guess that's correct. Signature would come in here. But the other cool part about the document template is once we've got these generated, it keeps doing this. Normally, and maybe it's because I've already executed this contract, can't step it back. But once you have your document packages generated through the normal workflows of pay apps and contracts, it will automatically create a distribution package with an email that has these attached as a PDF. So I don't even need to really worry about converting it to a PDF or anything like that if we're comfortable with sending this out via ACC to the client. But in other cases, and these will be grayed out, if we choose the download option from the document package, that will download it as either a zip file, or if I only have a single document in here like this one, it will download this as a PDF that then I could put through a signature, like e-signature program, send it out to the owner for signature. And then once I get that receipt back, then I probably come down here as an admin to my main contract and attach the signed document to the main contract for our reference. All right, so that is pretty much lay of the land. Any questions come in so far? I mean, I can spend a little bit more time showing, especially the variables within the tables, because those I think are the most confusing ones at first to understand.
There is one question that came in. It says, are there any plugins that can read a form and create a custom template?
That can read it. I'll assume by read a form, you mean something like a document that you've created as a contract document in the past, or if you have a contract document template from, say, Procore that you're trying to create in ACC. There's nothing that I know of specifically as a third-party tool that will scan a document and say, hey, this looks like an owner input, so replace this with the appropriate variable. I don't know of anything. We've done this more from a manual setup standpoint. So for our customers, they might give us an existing document for a contract, and then we'll highlight where we know the different variables are. And then just based on either looking through the help files or just based on our knowledge of the variables already, we'll start plugging in the appropriate ones to capture the data that's required for the document template. But as far as I know, there aren't any third-party tools that will do like an AI pass and figure that out for us. Be cool. Maybe we can IMAGINiT should develop one. Let's get in. I'll get into the weeds a little bit here. You know, the intent here is just kind of overview the document templates, but some things that Ramsey and I have personally run into, initially struggled with, but now understand them pretty thoroughly. Let me go to the pay applications. Actually, it would be a better example in the pay app document. All right, so I like to use this example. When we create payment applications, we will have several different line items that we need to report as part of our pay app. And these variables here in the document, it looks like there's only a single row, but this is very specific. So let me go into edit. These documents are intelligent enough that when we derive or create a pay app from a document template, if it has the correct syntax variable in this first column, so notice that this one has # payment dot column view items and then number. Don't worry about number here, but this little string, this syntax, starts we'll call it an index function. So this is telling the document that, hey, we're looking for anything that is a row in the actual pay app, and then we're going to pull in from those different items in this cell A here, row 2, cell A, the number of that pay app item, the name of the pay app item, and then original amount, change order amount, revised value, previous amount, material stored, et cetera, And then at the end of this, notice that this retention has a retainage variable, so it's going to pull that value into the last column. And then after that, we have a / payment column view items. This last variable closes the index. So everything in between here, you'll notice that these they don't say payment.name, payment.original amount. Think of these variables as like your bookends, and everything in between those bookends, the system automatically knows, based on the syntax of this index function, where to pull the name from. It's basically saying, oh, okay, name, I'm pulling the name from my column view items under the payment. I'm pulling the original amount from column view items. Same goes for if you're trying to if you've got multiple cost items associated to a change order, there are different index functions like this that will pull this into a table format. So what this tells us is that if there are 50 line items within that pay app, it will not finish creating that table until all 50 items have been recorded within the table. So it will in fact fill this row out, It will go to the next row, it'll create a new row for the second pay item, then the next row for the third, all the way until there are no more column view items left for it to gather, and then it finishes the table. So let me set up a pay app real quick to explain so we can see the result of this. But then I should point out the grand totals, we just have different variables to calculate. The total schedule value, the total of change orders applied to those items within the pay period, revised values, completed work up to that point, materials on site, total completed, percent completed, remaining cost or remaining balance to finish, and then whatever our total retention is for that up to that point when this pay app is created. So with these at the top, you can see they're more simple variables. So let's focus on this table really quick. I'll go ahead and zoom back out. Close this tab. Next month, we're covering pay apps, but I'll give you a quick preview with this. So under budget, payment application, I'll just set up a very simple master schedule, create a new pay period. I wonder why that went to April. Maybe when I created this project, I think the date is probably back in April. So let's go to September 1st to our 30th. So I'm just creating a single pay period here. And we'll say our due date is 15 days after the start. And zoom out, there we go. Save that. All right. Now that I have a pay period created against my main contract, I can create the payment application. This will pull in the main contract SOVs from your main contract. And then you can start to progress during that pay period against those items. I'll just throw in some basic stuff. So this period, let's say we've completed 30 amount of our fees, 15 general conditions, internal costs, $10 or 10%, not $10. Labor, month 1 to 2%, materials 5%, and our subcontracts that are completed, let's just go. Well, I just want to pull in some random values here so you can see how this table formats. Now, once those values are entered, these are all, and I can expand these based on how I lay these out. So if I wanted to be more specific, just based on how you set the main contract up, you can go into these individual sub items that are linked to the budget and start to change some of this, appropriate it around. I just did flat 30 across all sub items for that. So anyway, once those values are entered, set this as, can't remember, I'm pretty sure before, well, if it's in a draft, let's see. I'll click on the payment application, scroll to where our document packages are located, and I will generate that document package. So I am able to do this even when it's in draft. Generate from document template. Now there are probably some fields in here that I ignored, like, okay, cool, it's pulling the owner from the main contract. But if we had an architect and a collaborator and those need to be reported to your pay app, you'd have to fill in that information. Once the pay app is generated, like I said, usually it's not this slow. Maybe it's because we're always during our webinars, this stuff slows down. So, all right. So it looks like, as you can see, it filled out that standard information that I showed you within the document template, like the owner, the project name. It pulls in our payment application number that's assigned to this pay app. So contract 1, period 1, shows us the billing or the invoicing period. So contract date was executed on the 27th, but this billing period goes to September 30th. I must not have a project number or else it would have pulled that in, but more importantly, looking at this table. Remember when I showed the document template, there was only one row that had that index function in it. This is pulling all of the expanded values from the payment application and filling out this table to the very last item. So it's creating all of those rows, and I don't know why this one's showing as a dark. I don't know why that row, oh, you know what it is. There must have been a line somewhere in that document that needs to be deleted because that looks bold, kind of weird. Again, just having to know these documents and clean them up a bit, but it's populating this whole list based off of that index function. So it's pulling things like the payment item number, payment item name, schedule value, change orders. So you'll see zeros across the board. I didn't create any change orders in this project and execute any owner change orders in this project. So most of these should match schedule value against revised value. But then under the completed work, you can see that our current period, based on the percentages that I entered in the pay app, it's updating those fields to show that completed work within that pay period. And then a total at the bottom. So some really cool stuff. It's pulling all of this data based on those variables. The help does a pretty good job of explaining what those variables are and what they do. If we had markups and taxes and things like that in this project, we have different variables where we can plug that sort of stuff in. And I don't know if this is like the summary view kind of repeats within that document template. But as I mentioned, that is how you actually, so I just showed you a perfect example of how you get real data into these documents to review. You probably want to review how this is formatted, what's going into it, and start to customize your own document templates. But this should provide you a good starting point to start testing some of that stuff. And then I'll leave with one last general point. Get back into, mentioned earlier that sometimes the variables that we're looking for, what we're trying to do, they won't tell us in the help section. So what I found is when you are looking in the variables, there are some very confusing areas like this variable formatting that show you how just sort of some of the general things with examples work. And within these, you have these links like referred to moment, JS, JSON, or JavaScript for additional date formats. When you click these, it will take you to a separate website that explains the formatting. And you've got to kind of review this stuff. Like it doesn't work exactly the same with the variables here, but generally and I've tried some of these and they don't seem to work all the time. So, but for formatting purposes, like month, day, year, you get an example of what that result would look like if you're trying to reformat the standard date format that comes out of the ACC automatically. So yeah, talk about rabbit holes. You can definitely go into some crazy rabbit holes. Ramsey and I were working with a customer recently, and we had to filter some of their cost items based on the name of the markup within a cost item. So this kind of describes the syntax to apply filtering within the string. But you really need to know that, all right, I'm not working with an approved RFQ and adding one to it. I need to apply this concept to whatever I'm trying to do. So it's just describing what different math functions and different number and Boolean functions are, like conditionals. If true, give us this result. If false, give us this result. If it's neither true nor false, if it's not available, then return this value. So if you're familiar with any type of coding languages, I mean, this mustache syntax is extremely basic. So probably be able to pick it up fairly quickly. If you've never done coding or logical conditioning, it might be a bit of a struggle at first to really understand some of these custom variables. But it's kind of fun if you're nerds like me and Ramsey. It's cool to start plugging in stuff, see what works, see what doesn't, and then you have that sense of fulfillment when you finally get it to display exactly in the formatting that you want it to. Oh, and one last thing. This was a good tip that we learned from some of our friends at Autodesk. Within these document templates, go into edit mode for this one. Oh, shoot. This is the actual document that I created. Let me go into, click on this one here and open it. So, all right, especially for things like this. Sometimes if you're trying to fit a long string variable, or like in this amount section, and you don't want it to, because what would happen here, probably what we saw in some of the result, even in the main contract, was some like empty row spacing, because it's looking to fill in whatever the height of this cell is, the way it's laid out. If you're trying to jam in multiple variables, but within a single line of the table, and you don't want that weird spacing to occur, whatever the font height of the first mustache of the document variable is, that will populate it with that font size. So this is not a great example, but if I took, let's see, one that would be a good example. If for some reason these variables bump down to another line, what you can do is you can type in your variable normally. I would highlight all of the string text up to the first bracket. So let's say that bracket is looks like it's a font size of 10. So I want this to report at a font size 10 when I create the document, but my string values might kick to another line because the text is way longer than what we're actually outputting. What you can do here is you can make this text real small. And as long as your first bracket is the intended output font height, that's the result that you're going to get. I don't have a great example here. Maybe if we had a middle column with additional information in this table, it would start to cut off and bump these down to a second line, and then we're going to get some really weird spacing. So what you could do is you could come through each of these recipient lines, just scale that text down. Where did my button go? And then no matter what, it's always going to print at whatever the height of that first bracket is. So that was a really good tip when we learned that. I was like, oh, well, that saves a lot of time in trying to fight formatting within Microsoft Word. Whew. Went down into some detail, but hopefully that was a really helpful tech tip session for everyone. And let's see. Sarah, any more questions in the Q&A panel?
No, nothing else rolled in. We could probably just give it a couple more minutes to see if anyone else has any other questions. If you want to kind of wrap up and maybe talk about our next session.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, one thing I did want to mention during this tech tip session, we haven't done this for any clients, but if you're familiar with Autodesk Build and sort of the limiting nature of things like cover pages and submittal cover pages and stuff like that, you could potentially generate documents through cost management, pulling variables from the project to create other, maybe a transmittal cover page or something like that. Even though you might not be utilizing cost at all, you could plug in just some generic values, just so you would have something like a change order, but then you're only pulling in like the attachment reference name and the owner name and address and stuff, just to generate a more formal and customized cover page for a transmittal or something like that. So there's opportunity. I hope at some point Autodesk takes the functionality from cost and implements it into build to customize things like your cover pages and your report, your report headers and all of that stuff. But right now it only works in cost management. So there might be some cool workarounds to utilize the document variable functionality to create cover pages, even if you're not using cost management. And then also, what else? Oh, I'll let Ramsey, I'll finish with that. I've been talking way too much. But Ramsey, anything additional that you would add for value, or any experience that you've run into that maybe I forgot to mention?
Yeah, sorry, your voice was in and out there, Vince, but I got the gist of what you were asking. Yeah, so essentially there's a lot of ways to connect it all, and just know that you're not always limited to what the help page shows you. If you have any ideas that you can come up with within the mustache bracket, I think that other website that Vince showed, it shows some great examples of basically the what you can accomplish with these syntaxes.
Cool. And yeah, so our next webcast is October 31st, so Halloween, right? And we will be covering payment applications. So I gave you a little bit of a preview, just did a quick run through of pay apps. What we'll probably show here, and it's a really important concept within cost management, formatting of your pay apps is completely dependent on how you set up your main contract SOVs. So that's what we'll thoroughly cover in the next tech tips session. And yeah, register at IMAGINiT.com. It'll probably be both Ramsey and I on that one as well. And that's it. So thanks for joining today. I hope this was educational, that you guys at least pulled some information from the session. And as always, if there is any follow-up or questions that you all have, please reach out to your IMAGINiT account executive, and we can either set up, a follow-up call with you or talk about consulting or support training to cover these topics.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Vince and Ramsey. Appreciate your time and appreciate everyone being here today. And we'll see you in October.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.